Kevin Surace is CEO of Surace Materials and expert in what we call the built environment. Kevin, good to have you with us.
It is the built environment. I'm glad to be here.
Let's talk about exactly what that involves. Primarily, at least in my mind, energy efficiency, which is now the main topic in terms of energy conservation for the DOE with the arrival of Stephen Chu here in Washington.
No, that's absolutely true. In fact, we were fortunate enough to work with Stephen in his LB&L role long before he came to Washington because he was working on energy efficiency. In fact, that lab worked on energy efficiency for many years, as did NREL, ORNL, and others. The built environment really means the buildings we live in and the materials that go into those buildings. And when you look on a worldwide basis, which is a little different than the U.S., but on a worldwide basis, about 40% of CO2 is generated by living and operating and coming to work in our buildings, mostly heating and cooling, plus lighting, appliances, etc. And about 12% is actually generated by the manufacture of our building materials each year because they weigh so much. You don't think about it, but a building weighs a lot more than a little DVD player or a microphone or something else. So that's 52% of the pie. Now, interestingly enough, passenger cars, not including other transportation, but passenger cars worldwide add up to only about 9% of CO2. Now, that's a surprise to most Americans because in the States, it's more than twice that. Cars are a much bigger piece of the pie. But when you look worldwide, nobody uses their cars like we do in the U.S. So it's all about the built environment when it really comes to climate change, CO2, energy conservation. And as many people have said, including 3 McKinsey reports now, 3 years in a row, it's all about energy efficiency. That's how you get your money back.
Well, Kevin, let's set the parameters for that because it can be as low-tech as what the Secretary of Energy suggested, painting roofs white, and as high-tech as something along the lines of storing CO2 in concrete.
No, absolutely. So Calera is a company that's working on storing CO2 in concrete. It's a great technology. There's about 35 new technology companies funded in the built environment space working on bricks and blocks and walls and windows, etc., and of course concrete. We make high R-value windows, for instance. The dual pane windows that most people have in their home or most people have in their buildings were actually invented in 1865. Now I'm going to say it again, 1865, not 1965. So they were absolutely highly energy efficient for 1865 and maybe even in 1866. But by today, 140-something years later, I'm thinking they're getting a little old. And so we've got technologies 300% and 400% better, 400% more insulative than that is. And for a lot of buildings, compared to any dual pane window, you could save 30, 40, 50% of your energy bill going to a high R-value window like what we make. But you know, you have a lot of transformation to do here. I mean, consumers don't know to ask their window vendor what the R-value is. They're told they're energy efficient. And again, for 1865 they were, so they get Anderson, Pella, Milgard, Marvin, whatever. But if you start asking the R-value, you find out there are R2 or R3. We've got R10, R11, and your walls are even better, R13, R15. So we want to get closer to our walls, and we know that.
You know, Kevin, if you don't wade too deeply into this conversation here in Washington, you can't talk about it without hearing low-hanging fruit attached to the idea of energy efficiency. But is it at some level a very simplistic, basic switch to greater efficiency, one in which the technology is already readily available and it's simply a consumer and private industry choice?
Well, actually, for most areas of homes and businesses today, of course, we know that we can build office buildings at net zero energy, and we can build homes at net zero energy. So, in fact, all the technologies are here. Now, some of them aren't as affordable as they will be over the next few years, but they are here. And I gave a stat earlier today that's quite telling with the rapid growth of energy demand worldwide across all energies. If we were to apply energy efficiency to our buildings over the next 30 years, that would be the equivalent. And just energy efficiency to reduce the energy in the buildings by 75%. So not by 100, but by 75. Major jump. It's the equivalent of building 12,000 nuclear power plants. It's 12 terawatts a year of energy savings. There is nothing, I mean, we can't build 12,000 nuclear power plants. No one thinks we can do that. And so really, in comparison to anything else we can do, you know, as Amory Lovins has said since the 70s, it says it's negawatts. And negawatts always pay you money and put money in your pocket, as opposed to megawatts, which always cost you money. So to generate more megawatts, and today, even with renewables, costs more money. But to not use energy, which is negawatts, always puts money back in a consumer's pocket, back in your and my pocket.
From the federal standpoint, Kevin, what is the policy you need to see? How can the government set the table for private industry energy efficiency companies?
Well, so one of the things that has to happen is there's a fundamental problem today with funding these kinds of projects. So when you look at commercial buildings, which we do a lot in commercial buildings, when you look at homes, they have no way to fund the upfront costs sometimes. In fact, oftentimes, commercial building could be 10, 20 million to change out windows and put in other kinds of energy efficiency measures, even though they may get 100 million back over the 30-year time frame of those measures. But they don't have the 10 up front to put the 10 in to get the 100 back. And the same is true with homeowners. It might be $20,000 or $10,000 or $8,000 to change all your dual pane windows to high R-value windows that are going to be 400% better than what you have. But if you don't have the $10,000 and a bank isn't lending it to you, you have a problem. So this is where the government can step in and say, look, why don't we come out with a 20-year program? You're doing energy efficiency. We will give you a 20-year payback on that, because we know that the energy efficiency measures that you have will probably pay back in 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 7 years. So that means if you're paying on a loan, say 10 to 20 years, and it pays back in 5 to 7 years, you actually make money on day one, because the loan payment is much less than the energy savings that you got from your power company. And those are the kinds of ways that we can instill this kind of a transformation. And more than that, remember, when you change something in energy savings up front, it's the gift that keeps on giving. So if you do have the money to change out windows, the higher value windows, for example, and you can get your money back in just a few years, you will continue getting that money for the next 30. I mean, that's the thing. It's the gift that keeps on giving, and you want those.
Kevin Surace is CEO of Surace Materials, and if you can't tell, Kevin does have broadcast news experience. It showed through. Kevin, great to have you with us.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much.